What happens when you need to rent a computer, but the bill is like nearly $1 billion a month?
Yeah, and your landlord happens to be a rocket company.
Exactly. I mean,
Mm.
normally renting infrastructure is pretty straightforward, right? You sign a lease, you get some server space, you pay a manageable monthly fee.
Right, a normal corporate transaction.
But today, we are looking at a deal that just completely shatters the conventional scale of corporate partnerships. We're talking about a $30 billion agreement between Google and SpaceX.
Which is just a mind-blowing number.
It really is. And it proves that the artificial intelligence arms race has, well, it's officially outgrown the physical limitations of planet Earth.
Yeah, I mean, the sheer financial gravity of this partnership forces a complete reevaluation of where the tech industry is even heading.
Right.
We're looking at numbers that resemble the GDP of a small nation, and all of it is dedicated to constructing, like, the physical nervous system of the next generation of AI. So, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack this really extensive strategic breakdown we've got. It's a look at one of the largest cloud infrastructure agreements in human history.
And for you listening, I mean, this goes way beyond corporate trivia or shock value numbers.
Exactly. We are looking at the fundamental rewiring of the technology that you use every single day. The tools that, draft your emails, map your commute, answer your search queries. They're about to be powered by a network that looks nothing like the server farms we're used to.
Because to understand the capabilities of tomorrow's AI, you really have to look at the concrete and steel and silicon being bought today.
Right.
And this specific arrangement, it kind of anchors the entire future of the industry.
Hmm.
The raw numbers alone dictate the pace of innovation for, honestly, the next decade.
Well, let's start with those numbers because they definitely require a minute to fully process. So
Yeah.
we're looking at a 33-month contract.
It kicks off in October 2026 and runs through June 2029. And for that duration, Google is committed to paying SpaceX $920 million every single month.
Every single month.
Yeah, which brings the total deal value to an astonishing $30 billion.
Which naturally leads to the question of what almost $1 billion a month actually buys you.
Right, like what are they getting?
Exactly. Google isn't just renting warehouse space or, a few racks of standardized hardware. They are locking down dedicated access to this massive array of roughly 110,000 Nvidia GPUs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. To put that scale into perspective, deploying 110,000 top-tier accelerators makes this one of the absolute largest single compute clusters ever contracted, anywhere.
Okay, but I want to pause on the hardware itself for a second, because I think a common misconception is that you just, buy mountain graphics cards, plug them into the wall, and suddenly you have a supercomputer.
Right, yeah, people think it's just a giant gaming PC.
Exactly. But a cluster of this magnitude requires a complete compute stack. So, what does that actually mean in practice?
Well, a single GPU is incredibly fast at processing math, but in the realm of advanced AI, it's virtually useless on its own.
Okay.
It has to coordinate with thousands of other chips simultaneously. So a full compute stack means Google is buying this entire integrated ecosystem. You have the Nvidia accelerators doing the heavy lifting, but you also need high-performance CPUs to manage the tasks.
Right, you need the brains to direct the muscle.
Exactly. And massive pools of high-capacity memory to hold the data, and crucially, an ultra-fast optical networking fabric.
The networking part always sounds so intense.
Oh, it's the most complex part. It's the nervous system that ties all 110,000 independent chips together so they function as one massive, unified, synchronized brain.
I see.
If there is even a microsecond of lag between, say, rack A and rack Z, the whole training process just bottlenecks.
Which totally explains the price tag. Google is basically paying for the guarantee of zero bottlenecks. And the driving force behind this $30 billion shopping spree comes down to one specific product, right? Gemini, Google's flagship AI model.
Yep, it's all about Gemini.
Because we know these large language models scale linearly with compute. So the more horsepower you throw at the training process, the more capable and nuanced the model becomes.
Right, it's basically an arms race of raw parameters at this point.
So if Google wants Gemini to dominate the market that you, the listener, interact with every day, they literally have no choice but to secure the largest engine possible.
Yeah, but acquiring the hardware is only half the battle. Housing it is an entirely different nightmare.
Because of the power draw.
Exactly. Operating 110,000 GPUs at maximum capacity requires power on the scale of a mid-sized city. We are talking hundreds of megawatts of continuous draw.
That's insane.
And that's not even counting the industrial cooling required to stop the silicon from literally melting itself into slag.
Imagine your monthly rent, or mortgage. But it's nearly $1 billion, and instead of a house, you're getting the absolute cutting edge of synthetic brains. But that logistical nightmare brings us to a massively critical point in this agreement: the timeline.
Oh, the timeline is brutal.
Right. Because SpaceX doesn't have a decade to build this. They're operating under this incredibly aggressive, contractually mandated pressure cooker.
Yeah, they have to deliver this entire 110,000 GPU stack, fully operational and perfectly networked, by September 30, 2026.
Which is right around the corner.
It is, and the contract leaves virtually no room for error. The safety nets built into this agreement are unusually tight.
How tight are we talking?
There is only a 1-month mandatory grace period, 30 days.
Wow.
If SpaceX fails to deliver a fully functional $30 billion compute stack by the end of October 2026, severe financial remedies just immediately kick in.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Hmm.
I want to push back on the feasibility of this. We follow the hardware supply chains closely, and they are notoriously finicky right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Nvidia has massive backlogs. Getting the power permits for facilities this large can take years, let alone the physical construction and all that intricate wiring you just mentioned.
Yeah, the networking fabric.
Right. So by agreeing to a hard deadline with massive financial and reputational risk, isn't SpaceX kind of backing themselves into a dangerous corner here? If a cargo ship is delayed, they're on the hook for billions.
You're absolutely right to look at that timeline and see a massive vulnerability. I mean, it is an incredible operational risk. The contract allows Google to enforce what are called pro rata fee reductions.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
In simple terms, if SpaceX is late or if they can only get like 80% of the network online, Google only pays for the exact percentage of the system that is functioning.
Ouch.
Yeah. And worse, Google holds ultimate termination rights if the delay stretches too far. But, SpaceX isn't taking this risk out of hubris.
Why are they doing it then?
Because hitting that deadline is the linchpin of a much larger corporate transformation. They aren't just a rocket company anymore.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Because the ultimate goal here isn't just servicing Google. It's about fundamentally changing what SpaceX is.
Exactly.
When most of us think of SpaceX, we think of reusable rockets, satellite launches, the eventual colonization of Mars.
Right, the flashy space stuff.
But their internal work with XAI, and another Elon Musk venture, forced them to build massive data centers just to train their own models.
Yeah, they essentially looked at the infrastructure they were forced to build and realized they had accidentally created a gold mine. They developed the internal engineering muscle to build these massive, liquid-cooled, hyper-dense server farms out of pure necessity.
So they built it for themselves first.
Exactly. And once that infrastructure was operational for XAI, the logical next step was to monetize that capacity on the open market. This represents a seismic shift in their revenue model.
Wow.
Up until now, Starlink, their satellite internet service, was the undisputed cash cow meant to fund their aerospace ambitions. But cloud compute services are rapidly scaling to rival Starlink as their primary revenue engine.
And the timing of this pivot is everything. Because this Google agreement lands right on the eve of SpaceX's highly anticipated IPO, where they are stepping into the public markets with a projected valuation of $1.75 trillion.
Which is just a staggering number.
Right. But if you're walking into roadshow meetings to convince institutional investors to buy into that valuation, waiving a guaranteed $30 billion contract from Google is like the ultimate trump card.
It really is. It changes the narrative from we are a speculative aerospace company to we are a foundational enterprise infrastructure provider with locked-in, decade-long cash flows.
It grounds their valuation in undeniable earthly revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the market wouldn't believe they could pull off a pivot of this magnitude if Google was their only client. I mean, Google might just be a one-off experiment.
Okay, fair point.
The true validation of their new business model actually happened just weeks prior. It established the template that made the Google deal possible.
Oh, the Anthropic precedent.
Yes, exactly.
This was the detail that made everything click into place for me. Anthropic, which is, one of the most formidable AI labs in the world, signed a massive agreement of their own shortly before Google.
Yeah, they committed $1.25 billion a month.
A month for access to a specific SpaceX compute cluster dubbed Colossus 1.
Yeah, and when you look at the Anthropic deal and the Google deal side by side, a very clear pattern emerges. You have two landmark multi-billion-dollar agreements executed in rapid succession.
Right.
And more importantly, the contractual structures, like the way the service level agreements, the maintenance windows, and the network access are defined, They suggest a highly standardized enterprise-grade cloud product.
Wait, so this isn't SpaceX just renting out some spare computers on the weekends to make a quick buck?
No, not at all.
Contractually, this looks like they are actively packaging and selling a Tier 1 product.
Hmm.
Are we watching SpaceX actively try to dethrone traditional cloud providers like AWS or Microsoft Azure?
That's exactly what's happening. They are skipping the general cloud computing market and driving straight to the absolute highest tier, AI supercomputing. They're stepping into the cloud wars at the deepest end of the pool.
That is wild. But as aggressive as SpaceX's strategy is, we really have to flip the board and look at this from Google's perspective,
Right.
or Alphabet's perspective as the parent company. Because paying a potential rival $30 billion to host your most important product seems so counterintuitive until you look at the capitalization table.
Oh, this is where the strategy shifts from mere infrastructure to just brilliant corporate finance.
Okay, unpack this for us because this is fascinating.
So we have to rewind the clock back to 2015. Alphabet made a strategic early investment in SpaceX when the aerospace company was valued at roughly $12 billion.
Which sounds quaint now.
Right. Now, fast forward to today, with SpaceX heading toward a $1.75 trillion IPO, Alphabet's equity stake is projected to eclipse $100 billion.
That is an exponential multiplier on their original capital. So essentially, they're looking at an 8x plus value multiplier.
Exactly. And that equity position creates this fascinating closed-loop financial system.
Because Alphabet is sitting at the table as both a massive paying client and a major equity stakeholder.
Yeah, consider the mechanics of it. Every dollar Google spends on that $920 million monthly invoice acts as guaranteed recurring revenue for SpaceX.
Okay.
That revenue dramatically strengthens SpaceX's balance sheet, which drives up their valuation in the public markets.
Meaning the equity that Alphabet holds becomes far more valuable.
Right.
They're essentially subsidizing their own massive operational costs. Every dollar they spend appreciates an asset they already own.
Exactly. It's a paying yourself dynamic.
But I have to bring up the security aspect.
Mm.
If SpaceX has XAI and Google is training Gemini on SpaceX's servers, isn't that like storing your secret recipe in your rival's kitchen? I mean, how do you protect your IP when you're literally plugging it into someone else's machine?
Yeah, that's a terrifying thought for any tech executive. The contract attempts to solve this through what it defines as a strict firewall.
Okay.
The terms governing data security and flexibility are incredibly rigid to reflect the sensitivity of the operation. First, there are operational exit rights.
Like they could just walk away.
Sort of. Either party can terminate the deal with 90 days' notice, but crucially, neither side can pull the plug before December 31st, 2026.
Oh, so they are locked in an embrace through the critical deployment phase.
Right, exactly. And regarding the data itself, the agreement explicitly states that Google retains full, uncompromised IP ownership over all models.
Okay, but an agreement on paper doesn't magically stop someone from looking at a hard drive.
No, it doesn't.
I used this analogy earlier when reading our notes. It feels like renting a vault inside a rival's bank. Sure, they own the building, the cameras, they pay the guards outside the door, but mathematically, through end-to-end encryption, they do not possess the cryptographic keys to actually open your safety deposit box.
The vault analogy captures the cryptographic separation perfectly, but AI training introduces unique vulnerabilities beyond just locked files.
Like what?
Well, the firewall specifically bars SpaceX from utilizing Google's data exhaust and residual compute.
Let's break those terms down for a moment. When we say data exhaust, we are talking about the metadata, right?
Yes.
The passive trails of information generated just by running the system. Things like memory access patterns, query frequencies, or network routing logs.
Exactly. Even if you can't read the core data, observing the exhaust can give a rival immense insight into how your AI is structured.
Wow, okay. And what about residual compute?
So residual compute refers to the idle cycles of the processors. Let's say Gemini isn't utilizing 100% of the GPU capacity for a fraction of a second. SpaceX is contractually forbidden from siphoning off that spare horsepower to train XAI models in the background.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the physical hardware might belong to SpaceX and the money belongs to Google, but the workloads require absolute verifiable isolation at the silicon level.
Man, so we've covered the staggering financials, the tightrope timeline, the evolution of SpaceX into a cloud giant, and the intricate corporate chess of Alphabet's investment.
Which is a lot to take in.
It is. That alone is enough to redefine the industry. But the final part of this report reveals a post-IPO strategy that sounds like pure science fiction. because keeping this infrastructure on Earth is becoming unsustainable.
Yeah, the underlying tension of this entire discussion has been physical limitations. We talked about the massive power grids and the millions of gallons of water required to keep a 110,000 GPU cluster from overheating.
Right, right.
Earth imposes a hard geographical cap on how large these data centers can grow. Finding a single location with enough stable power, vast land, and sufficient cooling resources is getting nearly impossible.
Which leads to the most audacious element of their partnership, orbital compute.
Orbital compute, yeah.
The long-term roadmap involves transitioning from terrestrial server farms to deploying infrastructure in low Earth orbit. We are talking about building the cloud literally in space.
It's incredible.
But I have to stop here, because a lot of people hear space data center and think, oh, great, space is freezing, so cooling the servers is solved.
Right, that's the natural assumption.
But space is a vacuum. It is an incredibly effective insulator. A thermos works by using a vacuum to keep your coffee hot. If you fire up thousands of high-wattage GPUs in orbit, they don't freeze. They rapidly cook themselves because there is no air to carry the heat away.
Yeah, the physics of orbital infrastructure are notoriously unforgiving. You are entirely correct that you cannot rely on ambient cooling in a vacuum.
So how do they fix that?
Managing thermal loads in orbit requires massive, complex radiator arrays that bleed the heat off as infrared radiation. It is an extreme engineering hurdle.
I can't even imagine the logistics of that.
Oh, it's wild. And that's before you even factor in latency. You know, the time it takes data to travel from a ground station up through the atmosphere to the satellite and back down.
Right, because even at the speed of light, beaming terabytes of training data up to a satellite constellation and back introduces lag. And as we established earlier with the network fabric, AI training clusters cannot tolerate bottlenecks.
Exactly. And the latency issue is precisely why these deployments are targeted for low Earth orbit rather than geostationary orbit.
Oh, to keep them closer.
Yes. By keeping the infrastructure close to the atmosphere, the ping times are reduced to milliseconds. And while the thermal management is complex, the advantages are theoretically infinite.
Because you bypass Earth's limits.
Yes. You are no longer competing for municipal water supplies or tapping into strained national power grids. You have access to uninterrupted, unshadowed solar power and limitless spatial scale.
So we've gone from worrying about keeping servers cool with air conditioners to literally using the freezing vacuum of space. It's a complete paradigm shift for how we conceptualize the physical cloud. Ground-based data centers are starting to look like a transitional phase in human engineering.
They really are. We're watching the moment where aerospace and artificial intelligence intersect permanently.
Yeah.
SpaceX has leveraged its rocketry dominance to become a premier infrastructure provider, validating a new era where compute power is the most vital currency on or off the planet.
And the $30 billion contract is ultimately just the initial down payment on this transition.
Exactly. They are laying the groundwork for an architecture that operates entirely outside traditional terrestrial constraints.
So bring this all back down to Earth for you listening. We started by looking at a lease agreement that costs nearly $1 billion a month. But what we've actually uncovered is the blueprint for the next decade of technology.
Yeah.
We explored how SpaceX capitalized on the needs of XAI and a massive IPO to pivot from launching rockets to aggressively challenging Amazon and Microsoft in the cloud space.
Right.
We saw Alphabet execute a brilliant financial maneuver, funding their own desperate need for Gemini's compute power, while simultaneously inflating the value of their own equity stake. And finally, we saw how the physical limits of our planet are forcing the engines of artificial intelligence to migrate into orbit.
It is a profound transition, and it leaves us with a critical, lingering question to ponder regarding the future of the internet.
What's that?
Well, if the ultimate destiny of AI computing infrastructure is to move completely off-world, housed in orbital data centers floating in the vacuum of space, it fundamentally fractures the geopolitics of technology.
Oh, wow.
If the physical hardware powering the world's most capable artificial intelligence isn't located within the borders of any single country and isn't strictly bound by any single nation's physical jurisdiction, who actually governs the future of artificial intelligence? Who governs the future of the human mind?
Wow. It makes you realize that $30 billion might actually be a bargain for the keys to the future. Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.